we were talking about the basis for interim final rules previously as being something that stems from a national security basis. And the reason why there was a rule in 2020 that established the DODAM and the CMMC assessment methodologies based on national security was evidence that people hadn't implemented their requirements. And the jump that said, if you haven't implemented the requirements and we're losing data, we have to try to get you to implement the requirements to hopefully try and stem the loss of data to some degree. And at the end of last year, Merrill Research released another industry analysis in a long line of industry analyses going back many years at this point that analyzed the implementation rates of 800.171 requirements. And to the surprise of absolutely no one, the numbers are almost identical as they have been over the years about which controls are not implemented, the rates at which they're not implemented. I mean, you can look at the IG report before the CMMC rule. You can look at the DIBCAC numbers that we talked about in an earlier episode at the end of last year. You can look at Sarah Brin reports. You can look at MITRE reports. You can look at this report from Merrill Research. The requirements are not getting implemented for whatever reason. And so that was the basis for the 2020 rule. So when the 2023 rule comes up and they look around and they go, has anything improved since the 2020 rule? Are we okay taking a year to take public comment, or do we need to go now? And if you read the most recent industry analysis from Merrill Research, we should go now.
No, I agree. So the crazy thing about this this report, right, is that it's similar to the DIBCAC assessment. We covered it a couple episodes back. The results of the DIBCAC assessment, you see similarities in the controls. But what you do have in this report that is not offered in DIBCAC, and what everybody asked for when we started talking about the DIBCAC results, was demographics, right? Like a sampling size, what it was made up of, who reported, who did this, who did that. And so, like, I just see, like, now more insight as to what's going on, as to, how things are playing out. The revenue interest definitely brought it up. Only 35% of the people have greater than $1 million worth of revenue coming in. That's significantly important considering the cost that's associated with taking on this process.
Sure, of course. Well, I mean, according to DoD estimates, the majority of the industrial base are small businesses. So it would make sense that the majority of people, we don't know the exact number, but the majority of people have lower revenues than higher revenues. And then when you look at a report like this that breaks it out like that, implementation rates are the worst for people who have the lowest revenue, which is understandable. They have fewer resources. But the tension here is that if the implementation rates remain low, then you're more likely to have an interim rule than a proposed rule, right? Mm-hmm. If you get a proposed rule and implementation rates are low, that doesn't mean the rule isn't happening, right? There's other reasons why they decided to do it. But you can't. Now, what I would say is CMMC would be on much shakier ground if reports like this and numbers from DIBCAC were the opposite. If you saw a significant trend up of the number of implemented requirements, if you saw better scores, if you saw the numbers changing, then the need for CMMC and external assurance is not as strong, right? Because things have changed. So you go proposed rule, or maybe you don't need it at all, right? But that is not what we have seen. So whenever somebody's like, hey, it's delayed, you're like, first of all, what does that mean in the context of how rulemaking works? I don't know what you're talking about. Second of all, do you think it's delayed because things are getting better? Or do you think it might be for another reason?